The growth in quality from Peacemaker Season 1 to Season 2, both in the acting of its leads and the storytelling that the show does, to me was incredible. And whilst there is discourse online, it's not unfair to say some people didn't like the finale of Season 2 of Peacemaker. I think the ending we got was actually kind of perfect. Peacemaker is a very flawed individual, right? And he's got a messy life, he's got messy relationships. And how that coalesced with him falling into one of the oldest traps that there is, which is be careful what you wish for. It works because only Chris Smith could fall for that trap in the world of Peacemaker. When Peacemaker steps through that portal, he thought he'd found the perfect world that just better in every way, only to learn that it's really not that perfect after all, and this perfect world was in his head. This made the stakes very personal, and it's something that made it much more relatable as a viewer. I'm Phil from DC Chronicle. If you enjoy deep dives into everything DC, you're in the right place. I'd love it if you'd consider hitting the subscribe button. Let me know what you thought about Peacemaker Season 2 in the comments down below. So carrying on with the idea of personal stakes, my favourite part of the show was the personal stakes mixed in with this high concept multiverse idea. I've said a few times on this channel, I don't, as a rule, like multiverse stories in film and TV, but I do like them a lot in comics. And this season of Peacemaker was a very comic-centric multiverse story, which is its story first, and how does the multiverse element enhance the story. And we have too many examples now of film and TV where the multiverse story is just based on, you know, what actors can you get and what cameos can you have, which, yeah, this season it had Joel Kinnaman, it had Rick Flag Jr., but overall the storytelling around the universe and how it affects one man was done incredibly, and it's the kind of multiverse stuff that I really like to see. And with that one man, Peacemaker being an extremely flawed hero, alongside Emilia Harcourt as another extremely flawed protagonist, the growth in both of their acting ability from Season 1 and Season 2. I mean, earlier in the season when Peacemaker breaks down after having that conversation with his brother and his dad, to him screaming at them to get off his brother when they're attacking him, to his Angel of Death line in the season finale, all incredible. Harcourt as well, when she's talking about what a broken person she is. Really, they did a great job of selling that Chris Smith and Emilia Harcourt are two sides of the same coin in terms of being flawed characters, with Chris Smith not being aware of his flaws, maybe intentionally or unintentionally being blind to them. Emilia being very aware of her flaws and how that affects both of them in different ways. Now, ultimately, that leads to them coming together because they understand each other in a way that nobody else can. And going back to the be careful what you wish for storyline, whilst I love the Nazi world, like, I didn't love the Nazi world, but I loved the reveal that it was a Nazi world and how shocking that reveal was. The Otherworld storyline paid off for me in more ways than one. So in previous Peacemaker videos that I made before the show was released, I talked about how there were two ways they could have done it. And the first one is how they did it, where Chris joins this perfect world only to find it's not exactly what it seems and it's not all that perfect. Another element that I thought would be more interesting would be, what if that world was perfect? What if they didn't have the twist that it's actually an evil Nazi world? What if it was just everything Chris thought it would be? But ultimately, it's not for him, it's not his world, and we'd see him reject this perfect world that isn't his in favor of his very flawed world that is his. And we do sort of get that, because for much of the end of the season, especially episode 7, episode 8, all Chris wants is to be alone, and he wants the 11th Street kids to leave him alone. And what happens at the end of the season? He's alone, and the 11th Street kids are gonna leave him alone. At least for now. I have another theory that he's probably not alone on Salvation, but well, that's another video for another time. And then when you add to this the character growth of Chris, initially in the early stages of the season, he wants to run away to his new world and live this life, and that's his best idea, to coming back, starting Checkmate and wanting to be part of a group that tackles the issues that they have. I do think that would lead him down the path to being the hero that he wants to be, or the hero that he thinks he is if he'd just been able to go down that path. Which, as a side note, the reveal of Checkmate was incredible, as well as the reveal of Sacha Bordeaux as a cyborg. I think we will get some more OMAC stuff in the DCU as this universe progresses. I did make a video, check it out, about Sacha Bordeaux and how I thought she would play a bit of a bigger role, and so when that OMAC reveal happened, I was like, it's nailed it. But the sense of personal stakes for me was amplified and made all the better for, I mean, the villain of the series. Who is the villain? There's no real villain, and Peacemaker doesn't have his Joker, he doesn't have his Lex. And the season ultimately benefited from that because no focus was taken away to really develop a villain. It was all on Peacemaker and his relationship with the 11th Street kids. Because who really is the villain of the show? Is it Flag Senior? He's positioned at the end as the villain of the show, but initially he just wants payback on the guy that killed his son. I mean, that's sort of understandable when you think about it that way. He just gets turned by Luther at the end of the season into hating metahumans and wanting to use Salvation as his prism, which, as I say, lets you focus more on the relationships between Peacemaker and the other characters, especially Adebayo. The relationship between Chris Smith and Adebayo was incredible to see in this season, and I just want to play this one clip from the official Peacemaker podcast with James Gunn where he talks about that relationship and gets emotional talking about the inspiration. It's an incredible clip. I'll play it just now. If you haven't seen it, do go and check out the podcast episode though.
But then she says the thing to me that I find the most touching. And I'm crying. The thing I find the most touching in the episode is when she looks at him and she says, you're big and you're dumb and you're stupid, but when I'm around you, I know you love me. And you might be the only person in the world that I can say that about. And I'm crying because it's touching and the way she performs it is touching. I'm also crying because that's my dad. And that was the way I felt about him.
It's clear that fatherhood and paternal relationships are an extremely emotional subject for James Gunn, and they play some part in almost all of his writing. We've seen it all over the place, but to see it here in the Chris and Ads dynamic was incredible. And now to know that's what the motivation was, that it was really him and his dad, that just makes it hit all the more harder. Then another thing to address, right, is just this, people thought there were going to be cameos, lots of cameos in the season finale, and really I don't agree with that criticism. When you think about it, we had a lot of great cameos in this season. We had Guy Gardner, Hawk Girl, Maxwell Lord, as mentioned before, Rick Flag Jr. Lex Luthor was the biggest one, obviously. Then we saw Otis and the rest of his crew. Even that detective guy from season 1, he shows up. But people were expecting Superman and Blue Beetle. There were hints of everything. And whilst I get why we didn't have those cameos, it makes me wonder about this photo even more, though. I have to admit, like, David's in his full Superman getup. So what was he just hanging around in his Superman getup even when he wasn't filming? I don't know. I would just assume that he got changed in between takes. When he wasn't filming, he would get changed into something else, which to think that he didn't was quite funny. If you're having your lunch in the canteen and in walks David in full Superman getup, like, that would be a sight to see, definitely. But ultimately, I like that the season finale stayed fairly self-contained in terms of it is what happens to Chris in terms of the characters. In terms of the larger storytelling arc, there's a lot to go off with Checkmate and with Salvation as we lead into Lanterns, Supergirl, Man of Tomorrow, where I do think it has been said that Salvation will play a part in the Lantern show. I don't know if that's confirmed or if that's just a rumor right now, but it would make sense, especially, I don't know if I can show you, but there's a photo of the Green Lantern, the Lantern's logo, and there's what looks like the center as part of the Lantern's logo. And so you could see as well how Lex was clearly involved in Salvation. I mean, we were never going to get like a Brainiac reveal in season 2 of Peacemaker, right? So I think it's set up the future in the right way. And it's clear that Superman, the Justice Gang, or whatever they turn into, the Lanterns, Supergirl, they're all going to have huge problems with Salvation when they find out about Salvation, which ultimately they will. And that's not even thinking about the 11th Street kids. Like, what is Adrian going to do when he realizes that Chris is abandoned by himself on another planet? And then, I guess, minor spoilers for the Salvation run comic. Martian Manhunter is there. He's investigating for the Justice League. Martian Manhunter is a character that's been hinted at a lot in the DCU. So it makes sense that you could play Martian Manhunter into this storyline as well, which I have to admit, before this, I hadn't really heard of the Salvation Run comic series. I have read it since, and it's decent. Like, it's good. It's got some good ideas. There's some great videos. I'm sure if you know me, you know Professor Jenna, go read some comics. She did a great video breaking down Salvation Run, but it's got a lot of storytelling potential, and there's many ways that it could go. And then as well, they also teased the black hole and the note from Lex. Could that be the Phantom Zone? I'd love to know how the Phantom Zone works in this universe. And is that the same black hole where Ultraman went into? Could Ultraman return, and could Ultraman come out of that black hole? So ultimately, the season finale, it showed Peacemaker as just a flawed guy that he is. But ultimately, I thought it ended really, really well. If that's the last Peacemaker season we get, then fair enough. I'd be happy if they did more. But it's clear there are plans for these characters going forward. I expect we will see them in Man of Tomorrow, if not sooner. But I'm curious to know what you think. Did you enjoy the Peacemaker season finale? Where do you think this will go in the future? Do you have your own ideas? Let me know down below. Hit subscribe if you're new, and check out another video right now.